historic moment which allows us to design the contours of the European Union by deciding today to grant the status of candidate to Ukraine and to Moldova, and also to be prepared to grant this candidate status to Georgia once the priorities will have been addressed, taking into account for all the countries the reports and the opinions which have been prepared and which will be prepared by the European Commission. It's a very strong message which is being sent out. It's a message of unity, of determination in political terms. And we've had an opportunity to connect with President Zelensky for just a few moments before this press conference, and we'll meet with the other presidents, Yezu and Maya Sanduin, later, hopefully. Now, it was an opportunity to decide on the extension and amplification of support to Ukraine financially, militarily. We also had an opportunity in our conclusions to say that we will address the consequences of this Russian aggression on Ukraine, for example, food security and the whole issue of energy. And then this morning we had an opportunity to meet the leaders of the Western Balkans. That was an opportunity for a dense, fruitful, intense exchange, and it was also an opportunity to reaffirm our desire to breathe new life into this commitment process that we have with the Western Balkans. Now, we want to encourage reform in the area of rule of law, independence of justice, fighting corruption, but it's also important to be engaged with them to resolve a number of disputes which have constituted or still constitute breaks that hold us back. So we really want to move forward. So we're staying committed. We've got this difference of opinion between Bulgaria, Northern Macedonia, and we're really trying to find a solution. The Parliament has to take some decisions over the next few hours, and we do hope we're going to be able to free up the negotiation process with North Macedonia and also Albania, which is directly concerned by this debate. We also had an opportunity with, in respect of Bosnia-Herzegovina. There was a real desire around the table to breathe new life into the process with Bosnia-Herzegovina. There was a suggestion made that fairly quickly the Commission could actually come up with a report on the various conditions so that the European Council could come back to the issue of Bosnia-Herzegovina. We said that we're prepared to decide on the status of candidate, taking into account the conclusions of the report to be prepared by the Commission. Furthermore, we support the conclusions from the High Representative on the dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina. We really do want to, deliver some political impetus. So that's basically what we discussed today so far. I don't want to speak at such great length. We will be continuing later on. We're going to discuss the whole issue of a European political community. Some preparatory work has been done. The Western Balkan leaders were able to react tentatively to this, and they were rather favourable to it, which was an interesting idea. And I'd like to thank in particular the French presidency, because this is the last European Council during the French presidency, at least in principle. I'd like to thank you for the excellent cooperation, for your engagement, your commitment to the European project, to full mobilisation. We're going to be continuing to this evening and tomorrow, and we'll be able to come back tomorrow to some of the achievements of the French presidency. But I really wanted here and now this evening to get over this message of gratitude to the full team of the French presidency, and in particular I'd like to thank the President of the Republic. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can be very brief, because this is a very defining moment and a very good day for Europe today. I warmly congratulate President Zelensky, President Sandu, President Zurabishvili. All three countries are part of our European family. We've never let any doubt about that. And today's historic decision by leaders confirms that. It grants all three the perspective of EU accession and it lays down the path ahead. I think this is a moment of great satisfaction, and I'm very pleased with the leaders' endorsement of our opinions. There can be no better sign of hope for the citizens of Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia in these troubled times. Of course, the countries all have to do homework before moving to the next stage of the accession process. But I am convinced that they will all move as swiftly as possible and work as hard as possible to implement the necessary reforms, not just because they are required to move ahead in the European accession path, but first and foremost because these reforms are good for the countries, good for the democracy, because it strengthens the competitiveness of all three countries, and ultimately they are good for the citizens. Let me stress that I'm deeply convinced that our decision that we have taken today strengthens us all. It strengthens Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia in the face of Russian aggression. And it strengthens the European Union because it shows once again to the world that the European Union is united and strong in the face of external threats. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Monsieur le Président, vous avez...
Mr. President, you have the floor. Thank you very much. Well, everything's been said. I just wanted to stress just how important this historic moment is in the context we're living through right now, a war decided on by Russia against Ukraine and its people on Ukraine's soil. A week ago in Kiev, went together with Olaf Scholz, Mario Draghi from Germany and Italy, and Klaus Ioannis from Romania. We took this commitment to get an agreement to give Ukraine candidate status to accede to the European Union, which is the starter of a roadmap. We knew it all depended on a process, and over the last week we have made some giant strides forward, thanks to work done by the European Commission, first of all. They've proposed a method on the basis of work done together with Ukraine, and then together with President Michel. A consensus has been forged, unanimity indeed, between the members of the Council. And we saw this with President Zelensky, a very strong message, a coherent message. Right from day one of the conflict, Europe's been reacting quickly. This is historic. We've been united, first with the sanctions, 2 days afterwards, then the macroeconomic and military support, financial support we provide to Ukraine, and now by this political gesture. So I think this strong, united Europe has been up to the task. We're offering now a European perspective to Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia. That's a strong signal towards Russia in the current geopolitical context, with our choice to give Ukraine and Moldova the status of being candidates to join the EU. Also, we decided the candidate status will be granted to Georgia once they have met the priorities which have been identified by the Commission. We owe this to the Ukrainian people. They're fighting to defend our values, their sovereignty, territorial integrity. And also Moldova, given its political situation, the destabilization it's suffering from, we also need to respond with the same generosity that they've shown in this context that we're reacting to. It will be a long way. It will be demanding. The Commission will produce a report on the conditions, as to whether in respect of conditions we outlined in their report last week, and certainly we will be ready to help out from France at any reforms they need in this process to build unity. President Michel, moreover, in a detailed way, has described our discussions about the Western Balkans this morning and the start of this afternoon. Let me say, too, that we will do our utmost to make sure that the vote can be moved in the Bulgarian Parliament, and I think that's our responsibility as Europe to meet this opportunity too, so that North Macedonia can take the last step. They've done so much already. They've taken so many risks. In the coming days and weeks, then we need to be able to make that breakthrough too, and also for Albania. And so that way Albania and North Macedonia an important decisive step forward in this process. It all shows that our neighbourhood, whether we're talking about Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Western Balkans, is more essential than ever because war is back on European soil. We're destabilised by what's going on in our neighbourhood. And so it's in that context that we're going to discuss this evening forms of cooperation, multiple forms of cooperation beyond enlargement, and the project of European political cooperation, which, as President Michel has recalled, was defended very much by Serbia, Albania, and several colleagues. That's it from me for now. Thanks very much to the President and President of the Commission for fantastic work, which has enabled us to take this historic decision today.
Irisa, you're first. Please, there's a mic. Yeah.
Bonjour. Bonsoir.
Good evening. I have a question for all three of you. Now, the European Union has broken a lot of taboos during the French presidency, and you have all contributed to that. But how do you explain the impotence of the European Union when it comes to Albania and Northern Macedonia, when all you have is just one country in the member state that has this particular problem, and the doors are still not quite open, are they? A lot of work has been done. What's true is that Northern Macedonia has done some historic work with the courage of various leaders. One, Zaev, who took a lot of risks to change the name of the country, the constitution. Now, it happened a bit late in the day that one member state asked for changes. Now, we can't pretend that didn't exist. Now, whether that's fair towards North Macedonia, I would say not, and that's why we put a lot of pressure on Bulgaria in recent months, and this is the result of a political crisis that's happened recently in Bulgaria. We can't pretend that isn't happening. I'd like to pay tribute to the Prime Minister, his courage. He's done everything he possibly could. So I think we're very close to an agreement. We've made a proposal, working very closely together, and that allows us to accommodate the Bulgarian requests, which is compatible with what North Macedonia can do. But obviously, it's about visibility now and building trust over the next few hours. What has been agreed, there'll be a vote taking place in the Bulgarian parliament. And I'm relying on all people across the political spectrum in Bulgaria to support this. Now, we'll look to the President of the Republic. We'll have to make a commitment here. The parties in the current majority, those who are in the coalition, those who've just left it, those in the opposition should vote on this. It's their European duty. And over the next few hours, there'll be a discussion with the North Macedonians to finalise the agreement. Now, if everything moves forward as such, then hopefully next week we'll be able to have the co-repair meetings, the process, and move forward and get North Macedonia and Albania moving forward. But you're quite right. There's been a lot of waiting done, despite all the efforts.
Bonsoir. Ma question est pour la...
Question for the President of the French Republic from me. 3 years ago, you talked a long time after a summit about enlargement, and you said you had a feeling that evening that the only response Europe has is to get people, other countries to become members. And he said, I won't be president at that time. Have you done the same thing now, or is the situation for Ukraine quite different? Well, it comes back to what I was saying a few weeks ago in the European Parliament. Now, first of all, we have countries which are committed in this procedure. The train's left the station. They've got their ticket, ready to travel. It was the Western Balkans, Serbia, Montenegro. You can't tell them now. You can't tell Albania and North Macedonia that it's all over because they've made lots of efforts to open chapters, some of them, Others have had many years their status as candidates, but not been able to open chapters to negotiate yet. It's a question of credibility and also a geopolitical issue to stabilise the Balkans. Now, regards Moldova and Ukraine, to be quite clear, it is a political message, and I assume that in a given geopolitical context. And I'll be quite frank about this. Now, we won't be there straight away. It'll take time. There's a roadmap to get there. It could take years, even longer, in the European Parliament. Why? Because the logic remains the same, and I'll be forceful about this. When we talk about our neighbour, and if we want to stabilise our neighbourhood, we got to let them into our home. An idea is that we need to have a neighbourhood which is part of us, because otherwise the EU will set limits and that will be only particular existence here, and then they'll create tensions. There is a tension between the geopolitical approach of doing that and also the deepening of what we have already. And Serbia is another example. Serbia, over the last 7 years, has been committed to this process, but it's so demanding because we, in the meantime, made a lot of progress. So the geopolitical response today, in the context of war, is to continue to offer this perspective. Now, in terms of how long it's going to take, is it the same? Well, I'll say, as I said 3 years ago, no, because it's going to take time. And we are seeing a fatigue, an enlargement fatigue phenomenon amongst countries that have joined. But countries have been in this process for years and years and years. It's too long. It's terrible. It's difficult to carry out reforms that are demanded. It's a long road to travel. And that is why, too, I proposed, in the meantime, a European political community which thinks the right response. OK, we've got the EU. You can get there. We've got processes to become a member for enlargement, and they're in train. They've started. But it will take a lot of time. Let's be lucid. And maybe it won't work out for some of these countries. But in the meantime, we need to think much more quickly how we can stabilise our neighbourhood. And well, let's be honest. Maybe we won't always be living together in the same house, but we're living on the same street. So we geographically we're together. We share to a certain extent the same values, but we have some different standards on some things. We have different economic levels, which don't allow us to be instantly a single market. But we have to strengthen our links between each other as equals. And I see a need for new European construction. We're going to talk about that this evening, and that's what it's all about. You know, along the Russian-Turkish border, right down to our westernmost point, the UK, and anybody in between who's not actually an EU member. We need to build something together. We need to cooperate together on defence, geopolitics, energy, infrastructure, movement of people, very specific projects which will allow us to change the lives of people. And, you know, twice a year we get a real geopolitical discussion. But all these countries exchange on a common agenda and build a broader geopolitical area. We need that. But that's not necessarily the EU per se, because we have such a degree of integration, strategic intimacy, economic and social intimacy, such strong integration. We cannot sacrifice that in the name of this broader geopolitical need. We need to work together the two. So, no, my line of work is the same as 3 years ago. But right now, well, for good reasons, NATO said no to Ukraine membership. We would have left a vacuum and created a political error if we had said no now to Ukraine and Moldova, because we don't yet have this political community. And we can't leave a strategic and geopolitical vacuum there. That is the whole purpose of offering this European perspective, recognising the candidate status to these countries.
Question from Georgia. Please, yes, take the mic.
Georgian TV company Rustavi too. First of all, congratulations to our Ukrainian and Moldovan friends. Decisions already made now. The main message from you to Georgia, to Georgian people, and your advice, how can quickly we meet these criteria to have this candidate status to finally to be a candidate countries also as our friends. Thank you.
The first message to the Georgian people and to the Georgian authorities, this is the European perspective. It's a very clear and very strong message I want to address to them. You know that I had the occasion to work a lot with the Georgian authorities the recent months, because I'm totally convinced that it is extremely important for the country, for the people of the country, to implement the fundamental reforms, the fight against corruption, the independence of justice. And we are very, very close with all the Georgian institutions, for them to make progress. And based on the report of the Commission and based on the work of the Commission, I am confident if there is a political will in the political landscape within Georgia, that it could be possible for them to make huge progress, because I know that they know exactly what's needed in order to take steps in the right direction. And today we sent a very strong message at the geopolitical level, but not only at the geopolitical level. We know there is a choice made by the Georgian people and the Georgian authorities. This is the choice for the free world. This is a choice for the fundamental values, for the fundamental principles, for the democratic principles. And we really want to work closely with them in order to support their efforts and to work in the right direction.
I think my message to the Georgian people is indeed the enormous desire you have, and the longing to the European Union is the strongest push on the path forward to the European Union. And Georgia has now gotten the perspective. This is a big step, very substantial, the perspective towards the accession to become a member of the European Union. This is for the first time that they reach that stage. You have a strong economy. There has been a lot of political progress. Now what is needed is to deliver on a few reforms that are important and to show political unity, to engage the civil society and to move forward on these reforms. And then the next steps are within reach.
As we are reconvening in a couple of minutes, sorry.
Juste, parce que je suis interpellé, mais je partage totalement ce qu'a dit.
I would fully support what the President, Madam President, has said. It's a historic day. Let's recognise that for Georgia, prospects of membership. And the Commission has said very clearly what the conditions are for gaining that status of candidate, and that was mentioned by the President. I think we've seen just how clear the Georgian President's message was, and Georgian people went out into the streets and called for more Europe. So there's this groundswell of support for Europe, and that will be the basis for these reforms to be carried out.
Well, we'll have to cut it short here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll see each other very soon. Thanks.